Hello, Mr. Chauhan.
Hello, Puneet. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good.
Welcome to my show, Valor and Wisdom. You already know my name, but still, I'm going to introduce you one more time. My name is Puneet Singh Mehra, and today again we have our special guest, Mr. Jay Chauhan, who is the author of Love in the Empire. Mr. Chauhan, nowadays you look more healthier and more handsome, huh?
Thank you. Well, I was
No,
once upon a time your age, but the
yes.
age creeps on, and I'm delighted to work with you and inspire you with all my experiences and hopefully large audiences in India of your age group that are going to make India a great country, a civilization again. So let's hear your story today.
Sure. And even the rest of the world.
Yes.
We are everywhere. So, to all my viewers, today I'm going to tell you about that invention which was buried for a long period of time. We all thought that atomic and gravity and the third law of motion was discovered in 15th century by Europeans. However, it was already discovered in India in before 2500 years ago. So who was that person? So let me tell you the name of the person. His name was Maharishi Acharya Khanna. In Hindi, we call him as Kanu. So who was Acharya Khanna? Acharya Khanna, let me give you a small brief introduction about Acharya Khanna. Acharya Khanna was born in 600 BC in Prabhash Kshetra near Dwarka in Gujarat in India. Yes, he was a Gujarati also.
Thank you for letting me know. I'm a
Yes, sure,
Gujarati, just for your information.
yes, Mr. Chauhan. So basically, her real name was Kashyap, and he was a Hindu sage and a philosopher who found the philosophical school of Vaisheshika. And afterwards, he wrote a book on that research named Vaisheshika Darshan, also known as the father of atomic theory. So how Kashyap got the name of Kannad? So I will tell you a small story how Kashyap got the name Kannad. So one day Kannad came with an idea, Anu, which means in English, which means atom, indestructible particle of matter. So there's a small story. One day what happened, Kannad was on the street and he had some grain on his hand. So what happened while walking, what he did, he threw away all the small particles. And it occurred to him that he could not divide the food into further parts. And thus the idea of matter which cannot be divided further came into existence. He called that indivisible matter Anu, means molecule, which was misinterpreted as atom. He also stated that Anu can have two sides, means the molecules have two sides. The first one is absolute rest, and the second one is state of motion. And Acharya Khanna is the first person who gives a theory of the five elements. What are the five elements? The first one, air, water, land, sky, and earth. So these are the five elements which is given by Acharya Khanna. Acharya Khanna, he also believed that items to be minute objects, invisible to the naked eye, which came into being and vanished in an instant. He further held that the atoms of same substance combined with each other to produce divyanik. It's a Sanskrit word which means diatomic molecules. And tranatomic molecules means tranakua. It's a Sanskrit word. Kannad also forwarded the idea that items cannot be combined in various ways to produce chemical changes in presence of other factors such as heat. He gave blackening of earth pot and ripping of fruit as an example of this phenomenon. So what is Vasishtha Sutra? He wrote a book. So let me tell you the Vasishtha Sutra. In Vasishtha Sutra, you will get the 9 classes of the subjects of the realities and the 4 classes of atoms. So what are the atoms? So there are 9 substances of atoms. The 5 I already told you. Prithvi means earth, Apas means water, Tejas means fire, Vayu means earth. And the invisible one are the Akash means sky, Kala means time, Dvita means space. These are the non-atomic structure. So basically these are the 7 atomic structure. Now the 8th substance is the consciousness, Atman, which we call as the omnipresent. The 9th one is our mind, which we call in the Sanskrit is Bhavasya. So these are the theory which was already discovered by Acharya Khanna about the atoms. So let me tell you about the gravity. So everyone thinks that the gravity also discovered in 15th century or 14th century in Europe. However, if someone read about the Vasishtha Sutra, he already mentioned gravity as Gurutvat. Gurutva is a Sanskrit word for gravity and was responsible for the falling of object on earth. So in Vasishtha Sutra, Sanskrit. So first I will tell in Sanskrit and later I will describe it. So this is about the gravity. Slok, which he wrote in the Vasishtha Sutra, chapter 2, Anhik Slok 3. Apam Sambhogya Bhava Gurutvat Patanaham. It means waterfall due to presence of contact, due to the presence its heaviness. And one more slok which he mentioned in the Vasishtha Sutra about the gravity, chapter 1, Anhika Slok 7, Sambhogya Bhavata Gurutvat Patanaham, which means in the non-presence of contact, the pestle falls due to its heaviness. This is a gravity which was already discovered by the Acharya Khanna. Now, Acharya Khanna gave many words in Sanskrit. So today it's all translated into English, like Dravya means substance, Guna means attribute, Karma means action, Prithvi means earth, Apa means water, Teja means energy. So these all already discovered by the Acharya Khanna. So now one more thing about the third law of motion. Everyone thinks that the third law of motion discovered by Newton. However, the third law of motion already discovered by Acharya Khanna in 600 BC. So I will tell you the all third law of motion. So first I will tell you in the Sanskrit, then later I will translate it. The first law of motion. Veg nimitta visheshata karmane jayate. In English, it means the law stated that an object at rest tends to stay at rest and an object in motion tends to stay in motion with the same speed and in the same direction unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. Newton's first law of motion. Now I'll tell you the Newton's first law of motion, which is change of motion is due to impressed force. Now coming to the second law of motion. Acharya Khanna wrote in 600 BC, second law of motion. Vega nimitta poshakta karmanu jayate nitya dhate kriya prabandhetu. In English, it means change of motion is proportional to the impressed force and it is in the direction of the force. This is the second law of motion by Acharya Khanna. And now the Newton's second law of motion. The change of motion is due to proportional motive force impressed and made it in the direction of right line in which the force is impressed. Now the third law of motion, which was already written in the Vasishtha Sutra by Acharya Khanna in 600 BC. Third law of motion. Veg sanyoga vishesha parshudhu parhedu. It means action and reaction are equal and opposite. And for Newton's third law of motion, which is to every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, which he discovered in 16th century. However, the third law of motion is already discovered by Acharya Khanna, father of atomic theory. So many people know about one word which is Parmanu, right? Where does this Parmanu word come from? Is from Acharya Khanna. In Hindi, we call him Kanu. The room words, it derives from the Parmanu. And Acharya Khanna gave the name Parmanu to an indivisible entity of matter, which we call as atom. He classified all the objects and creation into 9 elements, which I already talked about you. So this is the untold history which was buried for a long period of time. So father of atomic theory, the gravity, and the third law of motion, it's already discovered by Acharya Khanna in 600 BC. So it was not Newton's third law of motion, it was Khanna's third law of motion. So Mr. Chauhan, what do you think about that part of history?
Excellent research, Puneet. I'm really impressed that you have dug out from Sanskrit, from the original text in Sanskrit, the law of motion and the law of gravity.
And atomic atoms.
And the law of the atomic theory, that there are atoms in all the matter.
Yes.
So all these ideas that we think have been invented in the West, and Isaac Newton, considered to be the founder in the Western country as an inventor. Now, why does it happen that way is a question that you and I should ask. Why is the Indian history of science diminished to a country that is downplayed in the world history? Audience explore that you went through very quickly the name of Maharishi Acharya Khanna.
Yes.
I do not know how to spell it even. And in a minute I want to explain to you why me as an Indian speaking Gujarati and some Hindi and born in Africa did not know that history. And I'll explain that to you until you slowly spell it for me. And I'd like the audience to do their own research and figure out that the story that you are telling is a true story that they can research. So tell me how to spell the name and then how the audience can research it so they can reach their own conclusion that the story of history we are telling is a true story.
Yeah. So its real name is Acharya Khanna. Khanna is Kanada. Khanna.
And Acharya spelled?
Acharya. Acharya means guru, teacher.
And Maharishi?
Maharishi means the great sage, the great saint.
So when you prepare this program, I would suggest strongly that you spell the name out and let people Google it. We have a wonderful invention invented by the Americans called Google. You can put the name in there. And very fortunately, you can speak and read Sanskrit, so you're able to connect directly what Isaac Newton said and show that how in the 600 BC, the Indian scientist Acharya Khanna had invented the same idea. We don't know if in fact a lot of the Indian material was translated into English for the English scientists to read and then develop and consolidate their theory. And then, of course, the Europeans actually, and especially the British, a very good way of recording their history and having a Nobel Prize from Sweden and all the method to show that this is the invention of the Europeans and organize it in such a way that the history is in fact not portrayed accurately, but rather in a biased fashion. So the comment I like to make it, why did I not know the name, is because I am of Indian origin. The British ruled India and impoverished India. My father, who was a liberation fighter, made the speeches, was put into jail just for asking for independence. And we had, my father couldn't get a job in India. He came to East Africa. I was born in Dar es Salaam as a result.
Yes.
So my teachers there were two British teachers there. And I remember them very fondly because they explained so much. And to me, one was Mr. Knight, one was Mr. Jones. Mr. Knight explained to me and we spoke in English. So all my degrees in England, Germany, and Canada were in European languages. So you automatically create a bias in your mind about how to perceive the world, how to understand, and you don't even know your own history actually. So I'm very grateful to you, and I want to inspire people of your age group to understand the real history that exists behind the history that we are asked to read. In my case, I didn't even have a history class because we were in a colonial country, Tanzania, which was called Tanganyika, and then it amalgamated with Zanzibar in 1962 and became Tanzania. So our perception of the world, including my education, my upbringing, was all done through the Western educational system in which we acquired that bias. So I'm very delighted to inquire into the history, and very important for our people, why the understanding of history and how to portray it to the public and be proud of it is important for our development actually, because India will play, in my view, a very major role as China recedes more into the background and America and China are battling. The Indian history, Indian science, and its own civilization will come more into the forefront as India industrializes, as Indian people around the world make their name and do their part to illustrate that they have the same capacity and sometimes can exceed the capacity of many people. So they have made their point by having members of the parliament and even used, and so these names. In the British cabinet, there are 3 ministers who are Indian. In Canadian cabinet, there are Indian people. There are people like Sundar Pichai, who are South Indian and heading Microsoft and major companies. Google, yes, Google. Yes. And they are heading these major companies in the US. So there's no doubt actually that our whole civilization, which is being displayed now through the talent of the Indian people in different countries, is going to be displayed also in India as India rises economically with a nuclear power, ability to send a rocket to Mars, and these things will change the perception. So the perception will change along with understanding of our own history that we need to be proud of. So yes. I think that that's the reason why I wrote my novel, Love in the Empire. And in that novel, I did explain actually how my teacher, Mr. Knight, was my hero. And he explained to me, and he was a very compassionate teacher. I learned public speaking from him, in addition to the English language and English literature. In Africa, we were studying Shakespeare. We were not reading Tagore, we were reading Shakespeare. And that's very important for us to understand our own literature, history, and even the science. And this is a very good example of what you illustrated today. And I congratulate you for learning Sanskrit and digging out that history. It was a pleasure to be on your program with you today.
Sure, Mr. John. And to every one of the Indians, keep your heads high. Never bow down your head. That's the message to every one of you. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. John.
Thank you.